How does a $6 bag of whole oats from the feed store produce more mature buck photos in 24 hours than a $24 mineral block produces in 3 weeks? I dumped a 5-pound pile of whole oats in front of a Reconix trail camera on a ridge saddle in southern Iowa last October 14th. A saddle is a low dip between two higher points on a ridge that funnels deer movement through a narrow corridor the same way water flows through the low point between two hills. Within 12 hours, I had 3 does and a basket rack 2-year-old on camera. Within 24 hours, I had 4 different mature bucks, 3.5 years or older based on body size and antler mass, photographed at the pile, including a mainframe 10-point I had never captured on that camera in 2 full years of running it on that saddle. 4 mature bucks in 24 hours, on a camera that had been averaging 2 to 3 mature buck photos per month on the same trail with no bait. I pulled the SD card on day 2 and sat in my truck looking at the photos for 10 minutes, trying to figure out what had just happened. 2 of those bucks were deer I had never photographed on that lease in 2 full seasons of running cameras. They were on the property the whole time. They were just never where my cameras were. The oats brought them to me. The oats did not bring new deer to the property. They brought deer that were already there, out of their normal patterns and into a specific location during a specific window. And the reason oats do this better than corn, better than mineral blocks, and better than most commercial attractants is a combination of nutritional chemistry and behavioral biology that almost nobody in the hunting media talks about, because there is no oat company buying ad space in hunting magazines. I have been running oat-based camera surveys and bait sites where legal for the last 4 seasons across properties in 3 states, and the results have been consistent enough that oats are now the only bait product I use for trail camera inventory. I will walk you through the science, the exact setup, and the mistakes that make oat sites fail. Stay until the end because there is a preparation method using blackstrap molasses that turns a pile of oats into a cold weather adhesive that sticks to stumps and logs and keeps producing for 5 to 7 days, instead of being consumed in one night. Before you dump anything on the ground in the woods, check your state wildlife agency website. Baiting regulations are the most variable and confusing laws in deer hunting. Some states allow baiting year-round. Some allow it for camera surveys, but not during hunting season. Some prohibit it entirely. Some allow it in certain counties, but not others within the same state. Iowa, where I ran the test I just described, allows baiting on private land but not on public land. The camera survey I described was on a private lease. If I had done the same thing on a state WMA, which is a wildlife management area, a publicly accessible hunting area managed by the state wildlife agency, I would have been breaking the law. 5 minutes on your state website tells you exactly what is legal where you hunt. Do not guess. The reason oats outperform corn is not about calories. It is about how the deer's digestive system processes the 2 feeds and the behavioral response that difference creates. Corn is a high-starch, low-fiber grain that whitetails did not evolve to eat. Corn was domesticated roughly 10,000 years ago in central Mexico and did not exist in the whitetail's native range until European agriculture introduced it 400 years ago. A deer's rumen, which is the first chamber of its 4-chambered stomach, where bacteria break down plant material through fermentation, is optimized for high-fiber, moderate protein browse like woody stems, forbs, acorns, and soft mast. When a deer eats a large quantity of corn, the starch ferments rapidly in the rumen and produces lactic acid faster than the buffering system can neutralize it. The result is a condition called ruminal acidosis, which is essentially a stomach acid crash that causes bloating, reduced appetite, and in severe cases, death. Deer that have experienced mild acidosis from corn learn to limit their corn intake to small amounts. Mature bucks, which are the most experienced foragers in the herd, are the most cautious around corn piles because they have had more seasons to learn that gorging on corn makes them sick. This is why your corn pile gets hit by does and young bucks, but the 4-year-old walks past it on camera at 3 a.m. without stopping. He knows. You have probably seen this on your own cameras. The mature buck that walks the edge of the corn pile at 2 a.m., sniffs once, and keeps moving while the yearlings gorge themselves until dawn. That is not caution. That is learned dietary avoidance. He ate corn once or twice as a young deer, felt the rumen distress, and filed it under things that make me sick. His survival instinct applies to food sources the same way it applies to human scent. He avoids what has hurt him before. Oats are a fundamentally different feed. Whole oats are roughly 12% protein, 11% fiber, and 60% carbohydrate. But the carbohydrate is primarily beta-glucan, a soluble fiber that ferments slowly in the rumen instead of crashing the pH the way cornstarch does. The nutritional profile of whole oats is closer to the natural fall browse that deer evolved to eat than any other common grain. Deer that eat oats do not experience acidosis. They do not get sick. They do not learn to avoid the food source. They eat freely, return repeatedly, and bring other deer with them because the feeding site becomes associated with a positive digestive experience rather than a negative one. A mature buck that has spent 4 years avoiding corn piles because they make his stomach hurt will walk straight into an oat pile because his rumen handles oats the same way it handles acorns and native browse. The oats do not trigger the avoidance response that corn triggers in experienced deer. That behavioral difference is the entire reason the 10-point showed up at my camera within 24 hours. He was not responding to a novel food. He was responding to a familiar nutritional signal in an unfamiliar concentration. The oats told his nose that a large pile of rumen-safe, high-energy food had appeared on his trail. His digestive history said, this food is safe to eat. And his caloric demand in mid-October, when bucks are building fat reserves for the rut, said, eat as much as you can find. Every biological signal pointed toward the pile, and none of them pointed away from it. That is the combination you want from a bait source. No avoidance triggers, all attraction triggers. He was not responding to a novel food. He was responding to a familiar nutritional signal in an unfamiliar concentration. Everything in this video, plus 60 more field-tested techniques, is in the Buck Hunter's Bible. 90 pages of deer behavior, science, scent control, scouting methods, stand placement, and rut phase tactics with a quick reference card you can take to the stand. Link in the description below, QR code on screen. The setup is simple, but the details matter. Buy whole oats from a feed store, not a grocery store. Feed store oats come in 50-pound bags for $12 to $18, depending on your region. Grocery store oats, the rolled or quick-cook kind, are processed flat and lose most of their hull, which reduces the fiber content and the slow fermentation advantage that makes whole oats safe for the rumen. You want the oats that look like small tan seeds with a papery husk still on them, about the size of a grain of rice. Those are whole oats. A 50-pound bag provides enough oats for 8 to 10 camera survey piles at 5 to 6 pounds per pile. 5 to 6 pounds is roughly the volume of a large mixing bowl, about the size of a basketball when piled on the ground. That pile size is enough to create a visible feeding station that deer can find by sight and scent within 24 to 48 hours without being so large that it lasts for weeks and becomes a permanent fixture that deer pattern around instead of visiting naturally. You want the pile consumed within 2 to 4 days and then refreshed if you are running a camera survey, or left empty if you are done collecting inventory data. Placement follows a different logic than mineral sites or scent setups. An oat pile is a food source, not a scent attractant. Deer find it by walking past it on an existing trail and seeing or smelling the grain on the ground, not by detecting an airborne scent plume from 100 yards away. This means the pile needs to be on or within 10 yards of an active trail, roughly the distance across a 2-car garage. Not 50 yards away in the middle of a flat, hoping deer will wander over. A trail junction where 2 or more deer paths cross is ideal because it maximizes the number of deer that walk past the pile in a 24-hour period. I learned this by wasting my first 2 oat piles on locations I picked because they had good camera angles rather than good deer traffic. The photos were great. The pile sat untouched for 5 days because no deer walked close enough to find it. Moved the 3rd pile to a trail junction 40 yards away, and it was gone in 36 hours with 11 different deer on camera. Same oats, same property, different location. The lesson cost me $12 in wasted oats, but it saved me from making the same mistake on every pile after that. Trail proximity is everything with a food-based attractant. A scent attractant can pull deer from 80 to 120 yards. A food pile pulls deer from 10 to 15 yards, roughly the distance across a bowling lane. If they cannot see it or smell it while walking their normal route, they will not find it. The common mistake that kills most oat sites is moisture. Whole oats absorb water fast, and when they get wet, they begin to ferment and mold within 48 hours. Moldy oats produce aflatoxins that deer can smell, and they will avoid a pile of moldy oats the same way you would avoid a plate of food that smells rotten. If rain is in the forecast within 24 hours of your planned dump, wait. A dry 3-day window is the minimum for a fresh pile to be found and consumed before moisture ruins it. I have lost 3 oat piles to unexpected rain over 4 seasons, and every one of them went untouched after the mold set in. The deer walked past them on camera, sniffed once, and kept moving. That $6 bag of oats was wasted because I did not check the weather. My notebook from that season has 3 entries circled in red that all say the same thing. Rained, oats moldy, deer walked past. I do not make that mistake anymore. I check a 5-day forecast before every dump, and if there is more than a 40% chance of rain in the first 48 hours, I wait. Patience with weather saves more bait than any preparation method. If you hunt in a region where rain is frequent and unpredictable, the molasses preparation I will cover at the end solves this problem by waterproofing the oats and extending their viability through wet conditions. The trail camera strategy that produces the best inventory data is a 3-day rotation. Dump a fresh pile on day 1. Pull the camera card on day 4. Analyze the photos. Do not visit the site between day 1 and day 4. Every visit deposits human scent, and the mature bucks you are trying to photograph are the ones most likely to avoid a site that smells like boot leather and truck exhaust. I run my camera surveys in late September and early October, when bucks are still in bachelor groups, and their home ranges have not yet expanded for the rut. The pre-rut bachelor group period is the best time to inventory which bucks are on your property because they are still grouped together and moving predictably between food and bedding. Once the rut starts in late October and November, buck movement becomes unpredictable, and camera surveys over bait lose their reliability because bucks are covering 2 to 3 times their normal home range chasing does. September and early October is the sweet spot. Same timing from the Whitetail Facts video, where we covered the bachelor group breakup and the pre-rut transition. Get your camera inventory done before the chaos starts. A buddy who manages a hunting club in Black Belt, Alabama, which is a strip of dark fertile soil running through central Alabama that produces some of the best whitetail habitat in the southeast, switched from corn to oats for his camera surveys 3 seasons ago after reading about the acidosis issue. His first-year results shocked the entire club. Mature buck photos on camera survey sites increased by what he estimated was roughly 60% compared to the same sites baited with corn the previous year. Same cameras, same locations, same time of year. The only variable was oats instead of corn. He said the biggest difference was not the number of deer, but the number of mature bucks specifically. Does and young bucks hit both corn and oats equally, but bucks 3.5 and older showed up at the oat sites at rates he had never seen on corn. His theory, and I agree with it based on my own data, is that those mature bucks had learned over multiple seasons to avoid corn piles because of the digestive discomfort, and the oats removed that learned avoidance barrier. A hunter on a lease in eastern Kentucky reported a similar pattern. He ran a side-by-side test with corn on one trail and oats on another trail 200 yards away on the same ridge. The corn trail produced 8 buck photos in a week, all young deer 2.5 years or younger. The oat trail produced 14 buck photos in the same week, including 3 bucks estimated at 3.5 or older. Same property, same week, same camera model. The oats pulled the older deer that the corn was not reaching. Look, everything I am walking through here is in the Buck Hunter's Bible. 90 pages, scent control, scouting, stand placement, rut tactics, plus a quick reference card for the stand. Link in the description, QR code on screen. I want to be clear that these are anecdotal results from a small number of properties. I do not have a university study to cite that compares oat versus corn response rates in mature bucks specifically. The rumen biology is well documented in animal nutrition research from institutions like Penn State and Texas A&M. But the field application to deer hunting bait sites is based on my observations, my buddies' club data, and a handful of forum reports that all point in the same direction. Run your own test. Put corn on one camera and oats on another and let the photos decide. That is the only way to know what works on your specific property with your specific deer herd and your specific hunting pressure. My data says oats win for mature bucks. Your data might say something different, but you will not know until you test it, and the test costs $6 and 1 afternoon of walking. The molasses preparation I promised at the beginning is the trick that turns a standard oat pile into something that survives rain and produces for 5 to 7 days instead of 2 to 3. Heat a cup of blackstrap molasses, about $4 for a bottle at the grocery store, in a saucepan until it thins to the consistency of warm syrup. Pour it over 5 pounds of whole oats in a bucket and stir until every oat is coated. Let the mixture cool. As it cools, the molasses hardens into a sticky glaze that binds the oats together and seals the surface against moisture. Pack the coated oats onto the face of a cut stump or a flat rock, about 6 inches thick, roughly the height of a brick. As the oats sit in the weather, the outer layer of molasses slowly dissolves, exposing fresh oats underneath. Rain does not ruin the pile because the molasses acts as a waterproof shell that sheds water instead of absorbing it. The molasses itself adds a sugar scent that deer find attractive, and the slow dissolution means the pile produces fresh oat scent and sugar scent continuously for 5 to 7 days, instead of being consumed in one night by the first group of that finds it. On a lone wolf hang-on stand in northern Ohio, I ran a molasses oat stump through 3 days of intermittent rain last October, and it was still producing deer visits on camera on day 6. The unmolassed pile on a different stump 60 yards away was moldy and untouched by day 3 after the same rain. I showed the camera photos to my wife, and she said it looked like I was making deer granola bars. She was not far off. The molasses oat stump is essentially a giant sticky feed block that deer lick and paw at instead of consuming in one sitting. The slow consumption rate is an advantage because it means the site produces deer visits over multiple days instead of one explosive night of activity followed by an empty camera. 1 cup of molasses, $4. And your bait site survives the weather that kills every unprotected pile in the woods. The most important thing I can say about oats or any bait is this. Bait does not make you a better hunter. Bait shows you where the deer are. What you do with that information, where you hang a stand, how you approach it, what wind you wait for, whether you have the discipline to sit the right day instead of every day, that is what fills a tag. The oats bring the deer to the camera. The camera tells you what is on the property. And the 90 pages in the guide on my website tell you what to do with that information once you have it. A pile of oats without a plan is just a pile of oats. A pile of oats with a plan is the beginning of the best season you have ever had. The deer are on your property right now. The mature bucks are there. They are just not where your cameras are, and they are not where your stands are, because nobody has given them a reason to show themselves in a specific location during daylight. A 5-pound pile of whole oats on a trail junction with a camera over it will tell you more about what lives on your property in 3 days than a month of driving around glassing fields at dusk. And when you see the photos, when you see that 10 point you did not know existed, standing 15 yards from your camera at 4 p.m. in golden October light, you will understand why a $6 bag of feed store oats is the most underrated tool in whitetail hunting. The expensive part is not the oats. The expensive part is having the discipline to use what the oats show you instead of hunting the same stand you have been sitting in for 5 years wondering why you never see mature deer. The oats give you the data gives you the plan, and the plan is what fills tags.